All right, welcome everyone to this Q&A. Again, want to welcome everyone. To this Q&A. A few questions to deal with, see how far we get here. There's a question. If, let's say, a Jew, what matters, rabbi, not a rabbi, right? It doesn't really matter here, tells another Jew that they're too happy with what is considered the best, meaning, I guess what it means is that they're happy being mediocre. That's what it sounds like. And they go, they sort of cruise through life. And I don't know what this necessarily has to do with Shabbos, but, let's say they have the same attitude. During the week, they have the same attitude during the week. On Shabbos, and it's akin, as we would say, it's akin to spiritual death, right? Someone who's mediocre or is interested in being mediocre, they're not interested in working hard, not interested in striving, not interested, in a lot of things. I've heard people say, I'm happy where I am. If someone says they're happy where they are, that's akin to spiritual death, right? So, again, I don't know if they know what it has to do with Shabbos. What else it has to do with, Shabbos over here. But, if a person, goes through the motions in general, whether, I'll make it easy. Let's say on a festival, the commentaries tell us there's a certain spiritual influence that we get on festivals and we get on Shabbos. So we don't use it right. We don't use it the way we're supposed to. Then what can happen? We don't get it back. Brothers say, well, I want to repent. It's too late. Once the holiday's over, once Shabbos is over, if you didn't use it properly, then you don't get it back. There's no way to get it back. So that's, again, if we're going through the motions in general, which probably most people, I would say most people today, that they're going through the motions. Going through the motions is one of the worst things a person can do. That means you're not inspired. It means you're not living inspired. And a lot of reasons, potentially a lot of reasons why that would be the case. But somebody like that who's happy, they're happy where they're holding, they're not interested in growing, that's akin to spiritual death. That means there's something wrong with their soul. Essentially, there's something wrong with all our souls. We mess it up. We weaken it by transgressing, by doing other things, right? But if it's, doing things by rote, and we've spoken about this, and this is really, what it's all about, being akin to spiritual death. And that is, if a person does things by rote, it's a problem. Huge problem. Why? Because it could be a person's keeping Torah mitzvahs, in general, only on, they're doing the minimal. And they're basically asleep, but, why are they doing what they're doing? Now, it could be they're afraid they're gonna fry in hell forever. Fear of heaven you need. That type of fear of heaven, the lowest level. That's the lowest level of fear. Is that a person is afraid they're gonna fry in hell forever. What's the highest level of fear? Understanding God's awesomeness. Understanding what he does for us, for the world, what he does for the human body, nature, all these things. So in doing things by rote, it's very hard to shake a person out of their spiritual slumber, because today you prayed, tomorrow you'll pray, the next day you're going to continue to pray, but again, there's no fervor. More my Hasidic side here coming out, right? No fervor, not like your life depends on it. You're going through the motions, the problem. But so why don't people live inspired? So simple explanation would be, if someone's a fat cat, someone's got, money in the bank, they don't pray so well. They're not lacking over here. They don't need God over here. Oh, when your back's against the wall, you put in a quarter, you don't know what's going to be. Yeah, we pray a lot better. That's definitely true. But, we say every day in the morning before the Shema, that God is machadesh b'chol yom tamid. That God renews creation on a daily basis. When he renews creation on a daily basis, we're not talking about past here. The language over there is present, right? It's really active, right? God is mechadesh. He renews creation, not past tense, not he renews. It's what he does on a regular basis, right? On a daily basis. So we say in the morning, a Jew wake up in the morning and say, Moda Ani. They'll thank God for giving their soul back. Now, we're half asleep, most likely when we say it. But we should say it with unbelievable fervor. You know why? Because God didn't give you your soul back. Our soul goes up to heaven when you're asleep. If your soul doesn't come back to you, God doesn't give you your soul back, you die. That's how people die in their sleep. Soul doesn't come back. So shouldn't we be thankful? Shouldn't we have a karas hatov? Shouldn't we have, should we feel good and have, and thank God for what we have? Right? 100%. We should be gracious over here. God gives us everything. Now, people will say, come on, my life is hard. This is hard. You're right. No one has it easy. No one gets off scot-free. So where's the appreciation? The Vilna Gaon, we mentioned more than 250 years ago, students were suffering from abject poverty. And before Shabbos, he would send them to the hospital to visit people. Mentioned the story many times. Why would he do that? Because when they saw people, they can't feed themselves. They're in pain. They can't do things on their own. They have a different appreciation. And even if things were bad and now they're better, where's the appreciation? We complain. We don't have this. This is hard. That's this. Whatever. We complain. So where's the appreciation? And if God didn't want, guess what? He wouldn't give your soul back. So we say, get up in the morning. We say, Modani. We should be absolutely thankful. Because we say the alternative is the worst. What's the alternative? We're not here. That's the alternative. So we have to have appreciation. That doesn't mean life is easy. Right? It certainly doesn't mean that. But doing things by rote, because I did it yesterday and I did the day before, and there's no inspiration, you're spiritually dead. And at a certain level, we're all spiritually dead. Why? How many people get excited every day? Got an opportunity to stand in front of God to pray. Got an opportunity to make a blessing. Unbelievable. Yeah, how many people are jumping up and down, whistling Dixie? Or doing the moonwalk? I do not do either. Right? But how many people whistling Dixie over here for everything we have? For the ability, to come in front of God to pray. Praying might be a mitzvah sort of goes by the wayside. We say the words, maybe we go through the motions, maybe a drop here, a drop there, we get inspired a little bit, but at the end of the day, we want to keep that spark alive. We want to work on that. We want to embellish that. And a person says, come on, I said the same thing yesterday, same thing the day before, a little bit different on Shabbos or a festival. So you can say, it's something the Gemara says always needs to be strengthened. Prayer always needs to be strengthened. True? Be the work. Something we have to work at. Keeping mitzvahs, not easy. We live in a messed up world, totally messed up world. I saw someone post that crazy, they're at a certain place. It's like, wow, so good to see a pride flag hanging up. So good to see an abomination hanging up. Beautiful. Like there's no embarrassment. like no embarrassment whatsoever, right? So, for a person's minds to be focused, and to want to go in the right path on a daily basis, it's a struggle. It's a constant struggle. Each generation has their evil inclination, right? Previous generations, it was communism, socialism, democracy, other things, right? Every generation has whatever that strong evil inclination is. So you can say, well, we're doing better than most because we do care. We do want to pray. We want to do mitzvahs. We want to go in the right path. That's all great. But you know what? Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes we're just not so inspired. And I think, part of it, or a good part of it, has to do with the fact that A, we don't know what we're doing. B, we don't relate to what we're saying. And C, which is probably, I think, the most important reason, and that is that we're too busy, feeling sorry for ourselves for the difficulties we have. And wallowing in our own self-pity. Because life is hard. We get beaten down in life. So how can I pray? You still got an obligation to pray. But again, we forget about the good. Very easy to forget about the good, right? So whether it's Shabbos, a festival, it doesn't really matter. When a person's doing something by rote, 100%, one of the worst things they can do. And something we always struggle with. Why is it the worst thing? Because why are you doing it? There's no energy here. No spiritual energy. You're just going through the motions. So, God's going to judge it and say, well, okay, you prayed today, true. God's going to look into your hearts. God's going to say, okay, how did they pray? Where was their mind? What were they thinking about? And when they were learning, did they get distracted? This, that. So could be. God will say, why? You prayed, 350,222 times, in your life. And most of the scorecards, you get a check for doing it, etc. But most of the scorecard, you get like a C-. You say, but I prayed every day. Most people don't pray. Most people don't do anything. True, you get credits. You get credit. But guess what? You did it like it didn't matter to you. You did it because you had to do it. You had that obligation. So the question over here is, if a person's too happy with where they're holding, that's what I think this person meant. They're too happy where they're holding. And let's say, you did mitzvahs that way, you kept Shabbos that way. Right? That's being, again, all these things are the same. It's akin to spiritual death, which is very, apathy is something that's very hard to fight. Very hard to change. Now, in a certain way, a person's doing things by rote is also apathetic. Now, you tell me, well, if they're apathetic, they won't do anything. That could be true. But they're doing it on a very low level. You're going to say, wow, this is a low generation. Okay. But see, we know better. We understand better. No matter if the low generation or not. We get an obligation to be the best we can be. God's not interested in us being mediocre. Go into a, person, you go into a job interview. You just tell them you're humdrum. Tell them you're mediocre. Tell them you're not striving for anything. Tell them you just do things by rote. You don't care. You'll never get the job. But see, in spiritual terms, it's so much greater. We have so much obligation, so much to be thankful for. And as the Chol says in Duties of the Heart, we give a lip service. Lip service. Maybe we do a third, a fourth, a tenth of what we're supposed to do. But you say, well, we're not going to make it all bad here. Well, at least I'm doing it. Most people aren't doing anything. True. But see, we don't care what other people do. God's not going to ask us about other people after 120 years. He's going to ask, why were you humdrum? He's going to ask, why were you mediocre? Why didn't you reach that potential you could have reached? So you're going to say, I got beaten down in life. And this was hard, and that was hard, and the other thing was hard. Well, but look at the generation. Compare me to what's going on in the generation. God says, It doesn't matter what's going on around you. See, we don't care in philosophical terms. We care within Judaism what a person does. Thoughts sort of go out, by the wayside. Because the Gemara says, Devarim shebalev eino devarim. Words in my heart, words in my mind don't matter in most cases. Right? So the question here is that considered so if a person does things in a mediocre way, and it's akin to spiritual death, as I would call it, is that a full violation of Shabbos? No. A person can keep Shabbos. I'll say like this. If a person, let's say they put their TV on the timer. They put the DVR on the timer to go off on Shabbos, right? They did it before Shabbos. Now, if they did it before Shabbos, did they do anything wrong? Right? They didn't do anything wrong. Why not? Because they set the timer before. They set the timer before. Now, according to Moshe Feinstein, a blessed memory, Torah giant in America, according to everybody, he said you're only allowed to use a timer for electricity. Turn on and off electricity. But other things, no. Let's say not your air conditioner, not anything else. Others disagreed, said you could use a timer, set it before Shabbos, and then have it go on, on Shabbos. Now, if a person, let's say, they put a timer on, you see where I'm getting to this. They put a timer on the TV, put a timer on the DVR, let's say, and it goes off. Technically, did they do anything wrong? They set it before Shabbos. They didn't do anything wrong. They don't change the channel. They leave it on, whatever. They didn't do anything wrong. You'll tell me it's not in the spirit of Shabbos. So all the Karaites say, see, but that's not one of the 39 categories. You're right. It's not a category. Right? But it's still a pretty serious thing. Because you're not taking Shabbos seriously over here. Technically, you didn't do anything wrong. What's the problem? You're considered what we call bimenuvu b'shus haTorah. You're disgusted in God's eyes. Which means a person can do many things according to the Torah and still be disgusted in God's eyes. Because technically, you can tell me, in this case, in that case, another case, you're not technically doing anything wrong. Okay? It's not the spirit, it's not something, it's a technical issue. You don't really do anything wrong. You tell me it's not in the spirit of Shabbos, okay? But you're disgusted in God's eyes. Right? So, is that a full violation of Shabbos? No. Not at all. Because technically you didn't do anything wrong. In the spirit of the law, that's a different issue. The spirit of the law is a whole different thing. Right? You're going to tell me the spirit of the law is a whole new thing. You don't want to transgress that. Why? Because it makes what you want to do much less. Takes away the vigor, so to speak, of a person being in tune to spirituality. That's what it does. It makes you weaker, in that sense. Again, you didn't do anything wrong. Right? But that's not a violation of Shabbos. In the spirit of Shabbos, yeah. In the spirit of Shabbos, we said it's being disgusted in God's eyes. That we would say. But is it a full violation? No. It's not a full violation. Spiritual death, or what I would call akin to spiritual death, being mediocre, is not a full violation of the Torah. Right? You're just not reaching your potential. You're lazy. Essentially, you're lazy. Right? But at the same time, it has tremendous negative effect. So even though it's not a full violation of Torah per se, but it can have negative effect, tremendously negative effect. What's the obvious negative effect? Not only are you lazy, not only are you happy being mediocre, what does it cause? It causes you to be weaker in Torah. It means that it's going to be harder for you to learn Torah. It's going to be much harder. Why? Because we're lazy. 100%. And it makes my resolve to keep Torah mitzvahs less, which eventually, at some point, a person's going to say, why am I doing this? I don't really believe in it. My heart's not in it. Why bother? That eventually, I'm not going to say everybody, but eventually they're going to come to that conclusion. And then they're going to stop keeping Torah mitzvahs. That's why it's bad. Right? That 100% is why it's bad. Because it weakens a person's resolve to keep what you need to keep. That's what it does. That's what it does. So now the second part of the question is that what's the punishment for spiritual death? Well, if you tell me, let's say a person ate chametz, ate 11 product on Passover, the Torah tells me you get spiritually cut off. If a person desecrates Shabbos on purpose, if you don't repent, you get spiritually cut off. Spiritually cut off means you lose your portion of the world to come. Over here, being akin, similar to spiritual death doesn't mean it's actually spiritual death. Doesn't mean you're going to get spiritually cut off over here. But if a person, let's say the majority of their life, or at some point during their life, they kept Torah like, I don't know, they just did it in a mediocre way. They'll get credit, doesn't mean they're going to get spiritually cut off. They'll get credit, but it's going to depend on a number of factors. One major factor is where's the person holding right now. In other words, where are they holding when they commit this, when they're doing things by rote? Do they know better? Don't they know better? There are a number of factors involved. Does that mean you lose your portion of the world to come? No. But I can tell you what probably will happen is that resolve will get stronger. Being lazy and doing things by rote will get stronger. It'll continue to get stronger until a person is basically not keeping Torah mitzvahs because they see too many contradictions in and of themselves. Why should I keep it if I don't really believe in it? I'm only doing it half-heartedly anyway. They know, deep down they know. And people in general do not want to be walking contradictions, which essentially, part of us is a walking contradiction. Why? Maybe we do things good. We keep Torah mitzvahs, to a certain extent, but other things we don't do. Either we don't do them at all, we don't do them so well, so you're going to say, but come on, but you're doing this, you're not doing that. Or you're doing this at this level, and this you're doing, like a 5-year-old, like an 8-year-old, something like that. Now, does that mean you lose your portion of the world to come? No. No, but the fact is you're doing it to yourself, and you're making your resolve much weaker. That a person is not going to want to keep Torah mitzvahs, or even if they do, they'll keep what they want. They'll pick and choose. Right? Now, a person I know would say, I'm happy where I am. They pick and choose. They'll claim not everyone can be Orthodox, not everyone can keep it, not this, not that. Whatever the excuse is. But not based on knowledge. They're just saying, I'm in a good place. No one should ever say they're in a good place. And what's the reason? Because then God says, let's see. Let's see where they're really holding. They think they're really doing what they should be doing. You want God to open up your file? You want God to check where you've been the last 2 weeks, last month, what you've been doing? I don't think so. Who's going to pass that test? There are multiple levels. So something, if someone's not really holding anywhere, not expected necessarily to be holding anywhere, and they're doing things in a mediocre way, if they know better, the punishment's worse. Right? We saw the Korban Aron in the beginning of chapter 16, the book of Leviticus, that the Rabbi Chaim Coffman brought down. The closer you are to the king, you get burnt. There's more responsibility. So if a person doesn't know what they're doing, they'll claim, okay, I'm happy where I am, but they don't even know what that means. Because they don't have any knowledge. So is God going to zap them more? No. Because they don't, it depends. If they don't have any more knowledge and they're not necessarily interested in getting any more knowledge, they don't know. And if they don't know, right? So it could be what they do, they're just doing by accident, right? But if they're at a higher level, and they do know better, then the punishment is going to be that much more severe. Again, doesn't mean someone who keeps Torah mitzvahs, and they do it by rote, they don't get a portion of the world to come. Again, it depends what they do. Depends what the scorecard is, right? But let's say they're keeping more or less, right? Are they going to have a portion of the world to come? They should. At least they're trying, doing better than most people, right? So they should have something in the world to come. Might not be such a big portion, but they'll probably get something. Doesn't mean they get spiritually cut off. I'm just saying what can happen is the more a person does not get excited about Torah and mitzvahs, the more you're going to do things by rote. The more you do it by rote, the more you won't do. You won't keep Torah and mitzvahs after a while. Because then you'll see the contradictions in yourself, and you're going to say, come on, who am I fooling? Who am I fooling? I don't really believe in it. Why should I really keep it? They're going through the motion, and they don't understand anyway. They don't really want to put in the effort. They don't want to try. Again, it could be for any number of reasons. Doesn't matter. But if somebody tells you, and I've heard this on a number of occasions, right? I've heard people say, I'm good. I don't need to work hard. Oh, these people, yeah, they do. Right? Myself included, anyone listening. We all have to work hard. Someone, if I was God, let's say, I put on my funny George Burns glasses, my funny mustache, right? And I see, look, I give this person life. I give them food. I give them shelter, right? Even if they don't own it, doesn't matter. I give them air. I take care of them, and they get a D. They get a D minus in how, and how they serve me. Now, does that mean they're going to lose their portion? No, it doesn't mean that. Doesn't mean they're not going to lose. They're going to lose their portion in the world to come. What it means is, if I were the king, and I was the king of kings, and I say you treat me no better than a dog in different ways, you're not going to say, okay, that's too harsh. They're not doing that. They make blessings. They do acknowledge you. They keep Shabbos. That's all true. That's all true. But you keep Shabbos. You keep the holidays. You keep Shabbos like a dingbat. My language. Or a dimwit, same thing. You're keeping it like an 8-year-old, like a 10-year-old. That's how you support me. That's how you thank me. So you're going to say we're all in trouble. We may all be in trouble. We may all be in trouble. Doesn't matter. We have to understand the severity. That's the point here. We got to understand the severity. And if anyone's going to say, now again, if I were playing God and I hear through the grapevine someone is saying, I'm good. I'm good at not working on myself. I'm good at not learning Musar. I'm good at just, learning a little bit. We're not learning that much. And I'm good at being mediocre. That doesn't make me feel so good. If I were the king of kings, I'd say, really? This is what you want? This is how you serve me? And I created you? God can say, okay, I know man's limitations. I know what man is capable of. True. Right? But for someone to say, I'm happy where I am, are you giving thanks for, having your lungs and your heartbeat, on a daily basis? You giving it lip service or you really mean it? Now, again, someone's going to say, who are you to judge? How do you know what's going on in a person's heart, in a person's mind? You're right. It's not for me to judge. But when someone makes a statement and they say, I'm happy where I am, right? That means they're not growing. That means they're not interested in growing spiritually. That's what it says. I don't think I'm reading that much into it, right? Now, again, person can have all the great intentions. They can have the greatest of intentions. What do I care what the intention is? What do I care what person's intention is? What does the Torah care about? The Torah cares about what a person does. Right? Torah doesn't care about your intention in general. Torah doesn't care what's in your mind. We said before, the Gemara says, Devarim shebalev eino devarim. It's in my heart, doesn't matter in general. But you see, if a person says that, that's what they think. That's what they believe. I don't need to work on myself. I don't need to upgrade. I don't need to upgrade my knowledge. My knowledge is very good where it is. Yeah, the Torah is infinite. You can spend till, today, tomorrow, the next day, the next 50 years, and never cover everything. And never get everything down that you need to get down. So you're gonna say I'm gonna rest on my laurels, and I'm good at doing basic things without having any knowledge, right? Problem is, if the person would never know better, they don't know there's anything else out there, etc. We're not really talking about such a person. Here we acknowledge, we get up in the morning, we say, Modani lifanecha. Right? We say, thank God, gave my soul back. Today's another day to serve it. Doesn't matter what I did yesterday. Doesn't matter what I did the day before. It's a golden opportunity. Tremendous opportunity. And you're like, I'm good. I'm good just going through the motions. Person does that often enough. Very hard to fight. Very hard to get over that hump. Because you feed yourself that same garbage. That's what you do. Right? Mediocrity is not going to get you a job. You better lie in the interview. If you don't lie in the interview, you ain't getting the job by saying I'm happy being mediocre. But that doesn't mean you lose your portion of the world to come. But again, what would Coffman say? Coffman would say that if a person is saying this, and they're happy being mediocre, and they're not interested in growing spiritually, eventually, I'm not going to say across the board, but I would think eventually, the person is going to keep less and less and less. I think that's going to happen. Now some people I'm thinking of that have actually said this. So they still keep certain things. I mean, obviously not the right way. Certainly not the Orthodox way, but they do keep certain things. Okay. But in the end, not enough to butter the biscuit here, they're in serious trouble. Further, they're not keeping what they should anyway, but okay, it's a different issue. What they're saying, I'm happy. I'm happy where I am. No one should ever say they're happy where they are in spiritual terms. Right? Imagine some of the professional athlete. You can say, I'm happy where I am. You always got to train, got to watch what you eat. I mean, got to have that, killer instinct mentality. Can't just say I'm happy where I am. That's not going to be good enough. Even if a person has tremendous raw talent, that doesn't get you over the hump. Right? You got to perfect it. You got to keep working at it. You don't keep working at it, it'll atrophy. Eventually. Right? So, you can't rest on your laurels. In spiritual terms, it's 10 times worse. Because it's just going to make a person do less and less and less. That's what's going to happen. Again, does it mean they're going to lose their portion of the world to come? No. Doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean they desecrate, if they go through Shabbos, just doing it in a mediocre way. They certainly could desecrate it in many ways because they don't know the laws of Shabbos. Okay. But let's say, they do the basics. That's not a desecration, full desecration. They may desecrate Shabbos because maybe, they transgressed over here. But it doesn't mean it's a full desecration just by doing it by rote. Doesn't mean that. And a person's going to have a person, in this case, will have a portion of the world to come, all things being equal. To me, I don't think it's going to be that big if they get there. Why? Because they do things and they get a D- on what they're doing. So they'll get something better than getting nothing. They'll probably get something, unless they don't know what they're doing. They desecrate Shabbos. They're liable for death penalty anyway. They don't repent. Right? So again, it's dependent on a number of factors. But we're saying, all things being equal, should be, they should have something. I don't think it's going to be very much, but it should be something. Someone asks, how does it apply if someone goes through trauma? Even a person goes through trauma. Yeah. Now, trauma is not something to sneeze at. If a person has issues, whatever they are, but they've gone through trauma. Now, does going through trauma in general, according to Jewish law, give you a free pass? Doesn't necessarily give you a free pass. Not going to give you a free pass. What happened? I'll throw this theoretical question. Somebody, they've done drugs, they're an alcoholic, whatever it is, and they came from a messed up house. Totally messed up house. And this is what became of them. Now, most people would say, well, that's a normal reaction. Someone, if their parents are alcoholics, most likely they'll be an alcoholic, right? It's in the genes. Now, it doesn't mean a person necessarily will, they just have more of a disposition. But even if that's the case, so we can understand, we can have compassion. People on drugs and doing other things, we can have compassion. It doesn't whitewash what they've done. Let's say someone's high on meth, someone's high on heroin, whatever, and they go out and they cause absolute damage, or God forbid, maybe kill someone. They can say, well, they're under the influence. According to secular law, right? Is that going to matter? They get a free pass? I don't think they get a free pass. They may be put in a hospital and locked away for a while, or go through rehabilitation, whatever. I don't think they get a free pass over here. Right? In Jewish law, you're also guilty. Now, the only question is, let's say, through the trauma that a person went through, and now they have other issues. Let's say now they have mental issues or other issues. So, again, it's going to depend. It's going to depend on a number of things. So we're just going to say, in general, person who has these type of issues, if they're not in the right mind, per se, and they're doing things they shouldn't do. So question is, how liable are they? Now, we're not going to say 100%, listen, they went through this. I don't care what they went through. They did this, that, and the other thing. They're going to be liable for everything they do. They'll be liable to a point, right? But it could be they won't be liable at all, right? It depends. If someone, let's say, went through a trauma, they're manic depressive. Right? They're on medication. They're good days, they're bad days. They can act out, different things. Is that person got an obligation to pray 3 times a day? No, they wouldn't have to. What about a person who's on the spectrum, on the autistic spectrum? They have an obligation to pray 3 times a day. They do. But what if let's say, got a phobia of being in crowds, being around a lot of people? They have anxiety. That was the word. They have anxiety. Right? Can you force someone like that, say you still have an obligation to pray? With 10 men, have anxiety. They get an obligation to pray. Right? Now it could be, maybe, certain therapy, certain medication, that can help that. But if they don't go to pray because they have anxiety, are they going to be liable over here? Again, they've gone through other things, or they're going through other things. God's not going to stop and say, you got to pray anyway. But they're not mentally they have issues. Now, we can say that about anybody, right? But again, if someone's gone through, we're talking about someone's got a mental illness, let's say, or, depending how bad it is. There are people out there, throw this out as an example, people out there that are bipolar. So if they're bipolar, so, I know somebody's gone through a lot of therapy, constantly in therapy, medication, and they function. They have a big family, married off a number of kids. They function. They pray, they do what they need to do. So it's definitely possible. Now, Could be, that the person goes off the medication or they don't go to therapy. They have some sort of episode. Are they going to be obligated to pray in such a case? No. Not going to be obligated because their mind's not there. Right? They did it to themselves. Yeah, but there are other issues going on. Right? I don't want to make over, generalizations. Right? It's going to be, case by case basis. Right? But, someone's a recovering drug addict. Right? They've been clean for a while. They have a relapse. Someone has a relapse. Can you expect them to keep Torah mitzvahs? How can they keep Torah mitzvahs? If they're high as a kite, or they're doing other things. How is that possible? They're not going to be expected. 100% they're not going to be expected. Right? So again, it'll depend on the trauma. It'll depend on, what they're going through. Again, if they've gone through therapy, let's say therapy doesn't work. Finding the right therapist is certainly not easy, right? In general. So let's say it doesn't work. They don't find the right therapist. They're totally depressed. And they have a right to be depressed, right? We'll make it easy. They have a right to be depressed. Okay. So again, tell them they got an obligation to keep, pray 3 times a day if they're a guy. God's going to understand that. The question is how far we take it. That's the question. It depends. It depends on the situation. Mental health is a serious issue. It's definitely a serious issue. Right? The problem is we go through difficulties. We go through a lot of difficulties. And a person can be broken. Now, again, it depends what the person went through. Right? It depends. It depends on a lot of different things. A person, forget mental illness. Forget mental illness. Let's say, their world turned upside down overnight. Right? They went from riches to rags overnight. Right? Let's say. Right? Take a case like that. Now, that's a trauma. A major trauma. Now, if that's the case, does that person have an obligation to pray 3 times a day if it was a guy? I mean, unless the person had a nervous breakdown, person might be in therapy, they're learning a lot of mutzah, all kinds of things, but really their head's screwed on straight. Doesn't God understand? Maybe, he's too upset, too depressed to want to pray. Now, God may cut you some slack. He may absolutely cut you some slack in some cases. On the other hand, what could it be? Right? Someone points out Trump's not always about money. I gave it an example. I can speak about being sexually abused. That's a huge trauma. Being raped, that's a huge trauma. Right? And parents are alcoholics being abused psychologically. That's a huge trauma. Going from riches to rags, it's also a huge trauma. Right? I can tell you from experience, it's a huge trauma. And I'm not going to tell stories here and put it under the carpet. Don't tell me it's not a trauma. It's a trauma. There are other traumas, not the only one. Right? Drug addicted parents. That's, divorce, abuse, right? Rape. The list goes on. Psychological abuse. I come with 150,000 different examples, not just money. But trauma can come through money. Certainly can. Right? I'd be very careful not to say it's not about money. I would be very, very careful. Because you tell anyone who's had a lot of money and they lost it overnight, not their own fault. And you tell them how they react. You tell me it's not a trauma, I beg to disagree. Right? You're any psychologist if that's a trauma. It's a trauma. I can tell you it's a trauma. Other things might be worse. I'm not going to say it's the only trauma. Right? There are plenty of things could be worse. Rape, yeah, it's pretty bad. Sexual abuse, yeah, it's pretty bad. And I have people tell me, I've heard this from a number of people, psychological abuse is probably 10 times worse than all that combined. You're going to say, but you don't know. I do know, actually. But I'm not going to compare. Because, someone who was raped, they're going to say, come on, psychological abuse is worse than that. Sexual abuse is worse than that, right? We're not going to make comparisons. Psychological abuse can destroy. It's not something minor. Maybe you tell me, okay, these other things are worse, and you put this right underneath it, okay? Right? But psychological abuse, can be pretty bad. You can have a combination. There are people who have combination. Psychological abuse, physical abuse. Person grows up in a messed up home. Parents always bickering, fighting, this, that. Kids gonna need serious therapy. They know what a normal house looks like. Right? And other things going on, and then the kid being used, one parent against the other. A lot of things, a lot of traumas. Right? I'm not singling out money. Money's definitely a trauma. There are plenty of other things. Plenty of other things. Can't the money trouble be a symptom of other traumas? I'm talking about going from riches to rags. I'm not talking, or business goes under. Right? Right? Is that why is that a symptom of other traumas? Why can't that be a trauma in and of itself? There was a very high suicide rate. Let's make clear. During COVID, when people who normally provide for their families and their business got shut down and then they couldn't pay their bills, suicide rate was up among normal people, middle class people. Couldn't pay the rent, couldn't pay for food, lost everything. And if they didn't, people were lucky they didn't, but then their business got looted. Thanks to Democrats. Business totally got looted. Well, why is that not a trauma? In and of itself, that's not a symptom of trauma. It's a trauma. Someone who's been working 20 years, 25 years, build up this whole business, lose it overnight. Try to hang on to it, lose it overnight. How do you explain suicide in such a case? And the high rate of suicide among business owners who lost their shirts during Corona. How you explain that's not a symptom of trauma. That's trauma. That's not a causative thing. That's direct. 100% direct. Could there be certain things, certain money things that it's a cause? Could be. I'm not talking about a cause here. I'm talking about something that's absolutely direct. Someone who lost their business, they can't provide. They've been providing for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. Never, had ups and downs, but nothing like this. Now they lost everything and can't provide. They feel like losers. They feel like bums. They feel like, they can't live. They're being choked all over. Take possession, declare bankruptcy, take possession of their stuff. I mean, that could drive anyone over the top. Easily. That's not a symptom. I beg to differ. That's not a symptom. That's direct. Could there be money issues that are symptoms? Yeah. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about a major thing. Person's business went under overnight. Person lost their money overnight. Right? That's not a symptom. That's definitely not a symptom. And there are wide range, things that come from that. Security issues. Imagine, I'll give an example. A person loses everything. They lose their house. Right? Right. One of the most stable things in a person's life is they own their house. And if plenty of people who say, well, they don't own their house. Fine. Right. Well, there's no greater instability than that. One of them. You're gonna say, fine, I've been paying rent for 20 years, 30 years, whatever. Okay. Right. But you own something, you're not worried you're gonna get thrown out. Right. I'm not saying it's paid off, the bank owns it, doesn't matter. Right. But the fact is you have stability. You have to worry. Landlord's gonna say, okay, you gotta leave because I want to sell. Or, I'm gonna fix it up, I'm gonna do other things, so you have to get out. Stability. That's a huge thing. That's a symptom. I would agree. That's not direct. I wouldn't say it's direct per se. It's an offshoot. There are a lot of offshoots. You call them symptoms. That's fine. Right? It's a trickle effect. Because again, imagine someone had no worries, this, that, overnight, they're like thrown out into the cold. Nobody empathizes. Nobody helps them. And they feel like they've just been kicked upside the head 150,000 times. That's a pretty big trauma. That's and then you got people talking out of both sides of the mouth and this and that, and you're sitting there holding the bag. You're sitting there holding the bag. How does that make you feel? You can say that's a symptom. Okay, it's an offshoot. There are multiple offshoots of something like that. But again, there are other things. There are other things that, someone grows up in parents are messed up. Let's say they got divorced. Say parents got divorced. Going to be serious trust issues. And the kids can be used as pawns, and they're shuttling from here to there. It could be all kinds of things. Let's say a parent gets sick and dies, and the child's young. That's a trauma. It's also a trauma. I'm saying nothing bad happened to them. Let's say it was an normal household. Mother got sick, died of cancer, mid-30s, early 40s. God forbid. That's a trauma. Plenty of traumas out there. Right? Now the question is, it can trickle down to a lot of different side effects. So the question is, where the side effects come and go, does that obligate me in keeping Torah mitzvahs? So it depends what it is. It depends how bad it is. Again, I'm talking in generality. Depends how bad it is. Could it stifle someone the fact that they don't trust God, they don't want to keep Torah mitzvahs because of what God did over here and other things? Could. All right, I'll give another example. I'll give you one other example. Somebody gets embarrassed in public. Seriously embarrassed in public. Now they get embarrassed in public by a Torah figure, by the head of a school, whatever it is. They get embarrassed, person gets made fun of, whatever, but that could spiral out of control. And the kid could say, oh, this is what Torah is. I'm not saying it's right, but this person got butchered. And someone who embarrassed someone in public, what's the punishment? You lose your portion of the world to come. 100% you lose your portion of the world to come. Unless you repent. Now, on the one hand, if a major Torah figure did this to someone, kid's 12 years old, 14 years old, 15 years old, let's say, and he got embarrassed and he says, I'm out of here. I don't want to keep Torah mitzvahs. He's going to be liable, no question. He's going to be liable. But at the same time, the person who did to him is more liable. It's worse what he did. He killed him. Now, that doesn't give this person a free pass. But look what it did to his self-esteem. Crushed him. Right? So I know cases like this. For somebody, this was the beginning of the end. That happened and just spiraled out of control. So, there are a lot of things the person can go through. It doesn't mean they're not liable if they don't keep certain things. I don't feel like praying. I don't feel, whatever, going through a hard time and this and that. Could be true. Could very well be true. It doesn't mean he gets a free pass over here. It depends what's going on. Depends how bad it is. Right? I want to tell me someone's bipolar as a bipolar episode, let's say. And they're not in control. They have an obligation to keep Torah mitzvahs at that point? No. What's their status? They have a status, what we call a shoita. Crazy. At that point, they're crazy. So who says the crazy person has to keep Torah mitzvahs? Crazy person doesn't have to keep Torah mitzvahs. That's for sure. Not everyone's gonna be down forever. We have ups and downs. That's true. My point is, if a person goes through it, you're right, there are ups and downs. But there can be downs where you just get crushed, demolished, go through a trauma. Doesn't mean it doesn't get better. We're not gonna say it's forever. But someone who grew up in a messed up house, it's gonna take a lot of therapy to get over the hump. Doesn't mean they can't necessarily function. Some people, it'll kill them. And they won't be able to. You're going to say, no, it's not that bad. It depends on a lot of different things. Someone asked, how do you heal properly without overloading yourself, burning out? So, some people, it just might, meditation might be good. Kosher meditation. A little bit of downtime. And a person, constantly listens to doom and gloom. That's not good. So when you're not in a good state, you want to be continually learning. And, the mantra is, the God, you're the one in charge. That doesn't always, I'm not going to say it always helps. Right? Because when a person is down and they're really down, right, it could be nothing that a person says or does is going to help over here. Right? They're going to say, so what do you do when you're down? So again, I would tell people, make a list of 10 things you're thankful for. 10 things. And then when you're really feeling bad and you're really down, take a look at the list. Before you rip it up and burn it, read it. I'm not going to say people are necessarily going to read it. Why? Because you're too upset, right? You're too down. But in the bigger scheme of things, we could easily say there's a heck of a lot to be thankful for. 100%. And there's a lot of things we could also cry. Plenty. But you see, you can't focus on that so much. Because if you do, you won't function. Right? But you can't, my Rebbe would say the past is the past. Can't live in the past. Right? But the past comes up. Okay? So, is it beyond my pay grade over here? Person might have to go through therapy to, get to the core issues, deal with the core issues. The best advice I was ever given, and again, I'm not saying this is easy, but the best advice I was ever given was you have to look at, certain people like they're absolutely out of their minds. They're whack jobs. They deserve to be strung up in a white coat and, be in an insane asylum. That's how messed up they are. Now, if somebody like that says something, and it can be cruel, it can be really mean, it can make you feel like a piece of dirt. But you know what? You look at that person like they're mentally challenged, right? I'm not going to be politically correct here. They're retarded, right? So someone who does something like that, and they say something, what am I going to get upset about? What am I going to get upset about? The person deserves to be in insane asylum, which is true. They do. So they're going to say something below the belt. It's going to get me upset. Why? Why should you get me upset? They're insane. They know nothing. You can say, but look at the pain they caused. Okay, we're not going to say they get off scot-free. You can't keep them in your head. They're messed up. They are messed up. 100%. It just so happens you had to go through it. Okay, and it's also true. Question is, if I understand that in my mind, and I think that over and over and over again, well, I don't care what they say. Say, yeah, but they're racist and they're anti-Semitic and they're this. You're right. 100%. That hasn't changed. And I want to learn, and then all they do is make fun, and okay. So imagine a 35-year-old that's got it's got the mental capacity of a 5-year-old. And he sits there and slobbers all over you, and he says things and pushes you. What are you going to get upset about? The person's retarded. Right? Now be nice. The person's mentally challenged. So if they're mentally challenged, what am I getting upset about? I'm going to get upset they said something? They got the IQ of a 2-year-old. I'm not going to get upset. I had someone, a while ago, try and get under my skin. I didn't even flinch. Didn't even flinch. You know why I didn't flinch? It didn't matter. Didn't matter what I was going to say. Nothing's going to help. They're going to get under my skin. I think, blah, blah, blah. Okay. It sounds like an idiot. I'm gonna call them on it for what? They're mentally challenged. I don't care if they have an MBA or whatever. They went to Ivy League schools. Who cares? They're mentally challenged. I'm gonna let them get under my skin for nothing. I got plenty of things to worry about. That's not one of them. On a scale of 1 to 10, it's like priority is like number 257. I'm not gonna worry about it. But that's gotten me through a lot. Knowing this idea. I'm not saying, didn't get affected by certain things, this and that. Okay, but in the bigger scheme of things, I don't let these things bother me anymore. Wasted time. Total waste of time. Someone's going to say something and, they're going to try and grind you, get under your skin. I don't care if they're family, parents, siblings, whoever. They're going to try and say, talk is cheap. Talk is cheap. You know, you just answer them straight back. Just not, it's not worth it. I was like, wow, that's so interesting. You ever look into it? No. You know anything about the subject? No. Okay. You're so conceited. No. Go learn. You want to go learn? Go learn, but, I gotta say, my 10-year-old knows more than you. They're going to say, well, what's the point of putting them down? You're right. You're not going to draw them close. Best thing is don't even do anything. Just leave it. Let them say whatever and you move on. It's totally not worth it. I'll take a few more questions here. Someone asked, why is there no focus on learning Nevi'im? Because in the Orthodox world, kids will learn it when they're younger. They'll learn it when they're younger, get simple explanation. Problem is, Nevi'im, prophets, is complicated. Extremely complicated. And there are things that seemingly in the prophets that contradict the Torah. So you have to have a lot of fear of heaven to learn the prophets. Right? So people can learn it when they're older. The emphasis is more on, learning Talmud and the commentaries. Not saying you should, someone who's considered a real rabbinic scholar knows all 24 books, very well, but that's the reason, because a lot of contradictions, seemingly contradictions. So you have to have a lot of fear of heaven, right? You have to have a lot of fear of heaven to learn it. That's not why it's really, that's why it's really not taught. Can a Jew consume organ meats? It depends what organ. They say the person eats the heart, it causes them to forget Torah. Liver, they can certainly eat. Kidneys, do we eat? I don't know, probably grind them up, put them in hot dogs. But most organs, I think except for the heart, you should be, as long as it's a kosher animal, you should be allowed to eat. I think the heart, again, a person eats it, it can cause them to forget Torah. I don't know if it applies to a woman, but I've seen that brought down. That'd be one thing. Can a Jew offer a prenuptial agreement? In the modern Orthodox world, they've been doing this for years. Having a prenuptial agreement, meaning that a person has money or whatever, you have an agreement, you set up an agreement before you get married. And also that, God forbid, if you get divorced, that the guy will give a bill of divorce. Could look like it's a forced get because you're signing something, not necessarily signing under duress, but they're working in the ultra-Orthodox community to have such a thing. They just didn't like the wording. And in a lot of modern Orthodox circles, they have a certain wording. They have a certain wording for it that the ultra-Orthodox community didn't like. So for the last, I don't know, I can say in the last 30 years or more, there hasn't been prenuptial agreement in the ultra-Orthodox community, only in the modern Orthodox community. Can it be done? I mean, they've been working on it. Some sort of language. Whatever. Like I said, they're working on it. The modern Orthodox community already has it. They already have had it for years, many years. And they'll claim, which is probably true, that's probably saved, saved a lot of people in the process. Even though the person had to get divorced, whatever, it's probably saved them quite a bit for a lot of things. But there I don't think there's a language that's come out yet, in the ultra-Orthodox community that's been accepted, for such a thing. But like I said, I think they're still working on that. But the modern Orthodox community, for sure, it exists. That's what I'd say on that. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah, there was one other thing I want to get to. I guess I have to wait till next week. I'm not going to get to it now. Yeah. Any other questions? All right, I'm going to stop here. I do this every Tuesday and Thursday, 10 o'clock Eastern time, 5 o'clock Israel time. I think I am doing Tanakh Talk tonight, 8 o'clock Eastern time on I think still crazy things said against non-Jews in the Talmud. Otherwise, I'm going to sign out. Anyone has any questions, find me on Facebook at Rabbi Chaim Coffman, or be on Orthodox Conversion Judaism. You can send me an email, rabbichaimcoffman@gmail.com, RBBIChaimCoffman@gmail.com. Wish everyone good beginning of the day, end of the day, middle of the day, depending on where you are, and everyone.